But first, this morning, a gruesome discovery by a farmer this April launched a new murder investigation to find out who had killed someone who'd been presumed missing for nearly 60 years.
My family, they've lived with this mystery for 57 years. They were saying that they'd found this body. When they put the picture up of the sock and the shoe, they gave me an incredible flashback that I'd seen these socks before. That's what triggered it for me. Grandad was just a simple man. His love of racing pigeons kept him busy. There was quite a bit of competition, which kept them all quite on their toes, yeah.
Alfred Swinscoe lived in Pinxton, Nottinghamshire. He was a miner, had 6 children, and was recently separated from his wife.
He worked at Langton Colliery. He had a good job there. He was known as a cutter, so it was well paid. He was quite well known for being generous at helping people out financially. You know, he was looking after Grandma and sending them money regular. His other hobby was having a drink with his mates.
His regular was the Miners' Arms in Pinxton, and one night in January 1967, he went for a drink with his 2 sons, Frank and Gary, and one of their friends.
It was towards the end of the night, maybe last orders, and Grandad gave Uncle Gary a 10-bob note to get around while Grandad went to the toilet. I remember Uncle Gary saying, I was up at the bar and I turned around and I saw Grandad walking out the door. That was the last he saw of him. I would have only been 5 at the time of his disappearance. They were in shock, disbelief at first, of course. Family tried to kid themselves, possibly that he went off to form another life, but they just couldn't fathom it out.
Police records from the time no longer exist, but it seems a number of organisations did try to find Alfred.
I do have a letter from the Salvation Army dated 1969. And they were basically saying, we have searched, but alas, we cannot find any trace.
Alfred's son Gary never gave up hope of finding his father alive.
Poor Uncle Gary, he'd sit racking his brain, where could he be? I mean, Uncle Gary used to tell me, I've been looking over at Pinxton, looking down the disused wells for him. That's how obsessed he was with his disappearance.
Gary died in November 2012, never knowing his father's fate.
And it was just Uncle Gary that persevered right up to his dying day.
So on the 26th of April 2023, a digger driver on a field off Coxmoor Road had established human remains whilst digging the periphery of the field. He could see a piece of clothing that was hanging from it and could see what he believed to be the lower part of the leg going into a shoe with a sock attached. From the post-mortem, we were able to establish that the remains were those of a male, that he was between 5'4" and 5'6", and roundabout between the ages of 40 and 60. Due to the grave itself being 6 foot deep, that gave us the hypothesis that this was a murder investigation.
Police recovered DNA from the remains and ran it through the national database, but there was no match. So detectives decided to ask the public for help, hoping that someone may recognise the clothing found with the body. They had dated their findings to somewhere between the 1970s and 1980s.
When they put the picture up of the sock and the shoe, I got some strange flashbacks. And I wasn't saying, I know that sock, Grandad's, I remember him wearing it. What I was saying is, those socks go back before the 70s and 80s, because I used to wear them as a young lad, which would have been, you know, late 60s.
When Russell got in touch with the police, they were interested to hear that his grandfather had gone missing in the area in the 1960s. Police took DNA from Russell and other family members and compared it to samples taken from the body. The results were a match.
Some breaking news. The police have just named a man whose body was found buried in a farmer's field in Nottinghamshire. It was Alfred Swinscoe.
Mixed emotions, yeah. Relief, but total upset at the same time. I wouldn't like to count how many times I've drove by him. So close. So close. He's been lay there shouting out to us for 57 years.
Once we'd found out who Alfred was, that was a major breakthrough in the investigation, and I have to then formulate a hypothesis as to why and how Alfred ended up where he did.
More than half a century after Alfred Swinscoe's disappearance, police launched a murder investigation. Without CCTV or modern-day phone records, police, once again, asked for the public's help.
His family agreed to participate in a press conference where we could seek help from the general public in and around the area where Alfred was last seen alive.
His disappearance tormented my Uncle Gary his whole life. It completely broke him. We still don't have the answers we desperately need. Please help us understand what happened.
As a result of the press conference, police received many fresh, viable lines of inquiry. But, so far, his killer remains unknown.
It's really important to find out who's responsible because they've got away with the murder for 55 plus years. We need to bring justice for the family, and they really do need those answers.
Grandad lives through me just from what I used to hear from Uncle Gary, and times like this now I wished I'd listened a bit more, you know, and when we eventually get his remains back, the fitting tribute will be to bury him with Uncle Gary, so they'll be reunited again. Pigeon fanciers back together. We just need to know why he was killed and who by.
An astonishing turn of events, and I'm with DI Melanie Crutchney from Nottinghamshire Police now, who you saw from the film. It is a strange and a sad case, Melanie, but as a detective, how do you go about working on something like this?
Well, it's important to understand how Alfred lived his life. That may give us the answers as to how he died. We do that by speaking to family and friends, and unfortunately we're frustrated by the passage of time in relation to who we can actually speak to.
Yeah, because it was so long ago, of course. So what have you been able to establish about Alfred at this point?
Yes, so we know that Alfred began in Langton Colliery at 14 years of age. He worked there with his two sons, Frank and Gary. He was married, however, they'd separated, and he had 6 children who he still saw. He enjoyed pigeon racing, known as the Pigeon Man of Pinxton, and he also drank at the Miners' Arms, which was a local pub to all the mining.
OK, it was a very popular pub, but it's no longer there
Absolutely.
today. OK, now, the location that he was later discovered, that could be crucial because of just how far away it was.
Yeah, so the last sighting of Alfred was in the Miners' Arms public house, and that's in Pinxton, which is Derbyshire, border with Nottinghamshire. However, Alfred's remains were found in Nottinghamshire, in Sutton Ashfield. That's some distance away. So I believe that those who are responsible for Alfred's death had access to a vehicle, which is quite significant for 1967.
Yeah, because not as many people had them, of course, back then. You're also keen to trace who he was lodging with at the time.
Yes, we know that Alfred was staying at 90 Park Lane in Pinxton. That address no longer exists. Therefore, I'm keen to trace who he was living with, as they might have some answers.
OK, we've got a lot of viewers watching at home. How can they help you today?
Well, as you know, Gary, Alfred's son, has died without knowing what happened to his father. The family do deserve answers, and therefore I need the public's help to bring those responsible for Alfred's death to justice.
And we've said this many times on Crimewatch Live before, there will be people at home and some of those may think they know something, they might think it might not be that important to you. You would rather have that information than not.
Absolutely, yes. Anything that they can share with us, yeah. We will sift through that.
Yeah, definitely, Melanie.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if you know anything that could be useful on this case, or perhaps you did live near Park Lane in Pinxton in Nottinghamshire, the border with Derbyshire at that time, please do get in touch. First today, Suffolk police are asking for your help after local ramblers made a shocking discovery as they strolled by a river in Sudbury.
This is somebody's family member. This is somebody's son, father, uncle. There will be people out there who will be missing them. Until we know who this individual is, we really can't bring justice to them or their family.
On Thursday, 27th of August 2020, a local walker was taking a stroll next to the River Stour in the Suffolk town of Sudbury when they spotted some black bin bags.
They called one of the park rangers. They've gone down, they've recovered 2 bags which they found to be quite heavy. And as they're doing that, they've noticed quite a strong chemical smell coming from the bags. They've opened one of the bags, and it's at that point that they've seen inside when a call like this comes in, the first thoughts are, is this what we really think it is? A report of what appear to be human bones can often be found to be animal.
But closer analysis revealed that the remains were human, and there was evidence of foul play.
In the first bag were what we believe to be the arms of an individual, but also within the bag was a boots carrier bag. Within that boots carrier bag were a number of stones to weigh these bags down. And then when we moved the second bag and the legs were found, the smell came from what we initially described as air fresheners, the type of thing that you would see in public toilets to potentially block any smell. There were around 27 quite deep lacerations caused probably by a heavy-bladed weapon, but not actually a cause of death.
Suspecting other remains may have been dumped nearby, police called in specialist dive teams.
We needed to search the river thoroughly. As a result of that, they found another bag. Within there were some further bone fragments. We had the bone down to the side of the nose and then a small part of the jaw, and within the jaw we had 2 teeth.
DNA testing showed they were all from the same person. A post-mortem examination couldn't pinpoint the cause of death, but the police say it was an adult man with an athletic or muscular build.
Police ran DNA checks to see if the victim was on a missing persons register or on the national DNA database, but there was no match.
We could tell that it was an adult approximately 5'6" to 5'9" in height. What we were then able to do is start to look at carbon dating and start to look at using the teeth that we had, but also sections of the bone. What we found is that our victim was in their late 50s to early 60s, born pre-1955 to early 1950s. They were likely to be of North European ancestry. They were likely to have had blue-green eyes and, at birth, likely to have had blonde hair.
Police looked at reported sightings and established the bags had been deposited in the river 7 to 10 days before being spotted. But carbon dating led them to believe the death was not recent.
We believe the date of death was between 2008 and 2012, and that's quite significant because there's quite a long pause then between death and between the discovery of the remains.
Police suspected the man had been murdered and his body stored elsewhere for a number of years before being dumped in the river.
The feet were pushed up towards the shins and the arms were bent in. So they may have been put into quite a tight confine to try and obviously cover up the murder. It's difficult to say whether or not this is definitively linked to organised crime. What we do know, from the state in which the remains were found, with the skull appearing to have a number of injuries, that this was a serious level of violence that was used against the individual when they were killed, and that could attribute to organised criminality.
So far, the identity of the victim and his killer remain a mystery.
It's really important that we identify our victim. What I'm really conscious about is this was somebody's loved one, this was somebody's family member, and until such time as we can identify them, we can't notify their loved ones. The other thing that identifying the victim will do is it will allow us to understand their lifestyle and allow us then to look at those other lines of inquiry that may generate to establish what may have happened to them, who may have been responsible for it, and to ultimately bring those people to justice.
I'm joined now by Detective Superintendent Mike Brown from Suffolk Police, who you saw in the film there. Mike, good morning. It was a gruesome discovery in a really quiet area. How were you first alerted to this?
You're absolutely right, it was. We received a call from the park ranger on the 27th of August 2020 to say that they'd just recovered some bags and they'd opened them due to a smell. And within those bags, they'd found some other carrier bags with stones and bricks that had weighed down the contents, but also human remains.
Absolutely shocking discovery. So what have you been able to establish about the victim?
So we were able to use DNA to get a full DNA profile, but we loaded that across local, national and international databases. And we've not actually been able to make a match on who they are and what their identity is. What we do know through radiocarbon dating, through other forensic processes, is that they were a white male, likely to be white Northern European. They were probably born with blonde hair, although that may have changed over time, blue-green eyes. They were 5'6" to 5'9" in height, a muscular or athletic build as a description.
OK, what about the skull itself? Because certainly from the fragments that you've recovered, there was some shocking findings with that.
There was indeed. The skull fragments actually were quite small in themselves, so we don't have a complete skull. But across the top of the skull, in a linear format, were 27 quite deep lacerations or injuries. And through the post-mortem process, the pathologist identified those were probably caused by a heavy-bladed weapon, but wouldn't have necessarily been the cause of death.
OK, now, we've got some images of the bags here, Mike. Just talk us through these.
So the black bags that I described at the start, they were fairly standard black bin bags, and you can see in the bottom corner there, kind of the remains of one of the air fresheners. They were yellow in colour. But it was within these bags that we then had the two carrier bags.
OK, and we see this next image here. This is one of those that you're speaking about now.
Boots carrier bag, but what we were able to do with this is actually age it. The branding on the carrier bags, they removed Feel Good from it in around 2008 to 2010. And the Boots carrier bag had stones within it, but also within the bags there was a red and white thingamybobs carrier bag that had the bricks in it. Now, Both were stores that were in Sudbury, and Thingy Bob's closed again around 2008 to 2012.
OK, we've got this other image here of another black bag. Talk us through this one, Mike.
So these two bags, so we mentioned at the start that a further find was found, and that was the skull and the other fragments that we had. They were in these smaller blue carrier bags. Now, these are typically seen in local markets for fruit and veg, for example. But again, two of these, one inside each other, stones inside the inner ones, and the skull fragments, again, inside that.
You've got a pretty good idea of when the bags were dumped, though, haven't you?
We have. The local community were brilliant for us, ramblers, users of the river. And what we were able to do is say that the bags were first sighted roughly a week to 10 days before the ranger was able to take them out. And they were close to the riverbank, and they'd stayed in that same location since they were first seen.
So that was recent, but the actual death happened sometime before.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the radiocarbon work that we did predicted death was between 2008 to 2012. Now, that's a huge amount of time where this person or the victim and their remains has been stored, and that's key to us, is finding out where that location was.
And you also believe the death may have happened some distance from where the bags were recovered?
Absolutely. The location, whilst rural, it's close to the Essex borders, and we've worked with three hypotheses around whether or not somebody was doing building work. They've simply thrown the remains away to try and avoid delays, whether or not it was a family member who may have been claiming benefit fraud for a deceased relative, and again, something happened that meant they had to dispose of the remains, or that it could be related to organised criminality and the expertise seen in the dismemberment of the remains that we've got.
Mike, who are you hoping to hear from today?
I'd really like to hear from anybody who remembers the person as per description, who maybe just dropped off the radar, who maybe just they stopped seeing or thought they'd moved away but had concerns for. It's really important we identify who they are. They've got loved ones. They may be the son, the father, you know. It's really important for us to let those loved ones know, but also for us to identify this key piece of the jigsaw in terms of who they are.
Very well said. Thank you, Mike. And have a good look. If you've got any information that could be of relevance, please do get in touch. The contact details are on the screen throughout the whole programme.
First this morning, back in 1984, a carefree 15-year-old's life was turned upside down. To tell a story, the victim has asked that we use her real voice as she gives us an account of what happened to her all those years ago. And just to say, this might be a hard listen for some viewers.
It was 1984. I was 15. I lived in Edmonton, London. I was on my own, wandering around, and then I went to Pim's Park. It was a really sunny afternoon, blue sky, fluffy white clouds. I could just walk and think about things and walk down the pathway by the railing towards a couple of sets of swings there. And there was a lady in maybe her mid-20s, with quite slim, and she had two toddlers with her. Next door to that was the older swings. He was sat in the middle one on his own. He wasn't much older than me. He was a bit unshaven, and I saw him sitting there, and I walked past. I didn't even hear him at all. He came from behind me and he grabbed me. He had a knife at my throat, and it was digging in, and he said, "Shut up and do as I tell you." I didn't know what to do. He pushed me down. I was screaming and crying, trying to kick him off because I knew he had the knife. He was very forceful. He knew what he was doing. And then he raped me. There was a dog barking, but it was a big dog. I could see the dog's paws and the feet of someone there. And the dog was trying to get in the bushes. And then he got off of me really quickly and went running. After it happened, I saw he'd left the knife behind, and I picked that up and crawled out, and the dog was there with the girl. She had dark brown hair, dark brown eyes, and like olive skin. And the dog that she had was a proper German Shepherd. And I think she was calling him Bobby. Bobby. She saw me and she looked shocked. And I ran home. It's been 40 years. I buried it, and then carried on with life to survive, to get through life. It all came back recently when I had a breakdown. What he did to me that day stayed with me, and it's affected me by not being able to go out and enjoy nature and the countryside. Please, there must be someone that knows who this person is. I need answers for me to think that I'm important enough. Why can't I have some justice for the wrongs that have been done to me? He has to be accountable for what he has done and the damage he has caused.
Well, I'm joined now by DC Jake Flanders from the Met Police. Jake, thanks so much for coming in this morning. Just listening to the victim's account there, I mean, it's immensely powerful to listen to. She's lived with this secret trauma for years, and now she just wants to be heard, doesn't she? She wants people to stand up and listen to what she's got to say.
Yeah, we're determined to get justice for this victim. The passage of time could mean that loyalties have changed, or so if someone confided in you at the time, or perhaps you heard or saw something but felt that you were too afraid to come forwards, now is your chance to do so. Yeah, absolutely. Now, she actually kept a scrapbook, didn't she, of the details of what happened that day. We can see she's kind of done a drawing of the layout of the park there, and she also had details of the man himself there. You can see she's listed quite a few things, hasn't she, Jake? Yeah, I think you can see the genuine trauma and effect this has had on her, despite it being so many years ago. Yeah, that's very true. So just remind us of where and when this took place. So this attack happened in broad daylight in Edmonton Fields Park on the 9th of October 1984. The victim, who was 15 years old at the time, was grabbed, threatened with a knife and pulled into some bushes just south of the football field towards A406, where she was raped. Just a horrific thing to have happened to her. We heard in the film of two possible witnesses that may have seen something strange that day, and you want to be able to locate them as well, don't you? Yeah, Fields Park is a busy place. It was busy and well used back in 1984 as well. The victim describes two people in particular that she remembers: a woman with two young children at the swings and a young girl with a German Shepherd dog. It was this dog that disrupted the rapist before he ran away. We're looking to track down these two individuals to speak with them and with anyone else who was in the park on the 9th of October 1984 who may remember seeing anything.
Yeah, and talking about the dog, we believe it to be called Bobby, don't we, just in case that jogs anybody's memory. The victim was able to give a good description of the attacker, wasn't she?
Yeah, so she described him as a black male aged between 18 and 25, approximately 5'7" to 5'9" of an average build. She describes him having patchy facial hair and smelling badly of body odour. He was wearing blue dirty jeans and very worn white trainers.
And what's even more terrifying, Jake, is that he was carrying this knife, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was threatening her with a knife. She described it to be similar to a paring knife. It had no teeth on the blade and had a dark brown wooden handle and appeared to have been sharpened down to a point.
And given the nature of this attack, you do believe that this man could have done something similar before this particular attack and maybe even after?
Yeah, it's likely that this suspect attacked others before and after this incident too. So if this man sounds familiar to you, or you know of or heard about a similar attack in that area of London at that time, we'd urge you to get in touch. And if you were in the park on the 9th of October 1984, we'd also urge you to come forwards.
Jake, thanks so much for joining us today. So if you do have any memories around this that could help, then please do come forward. All the ways you can contact us are on your screens throughout the whole programme. But first, today marks 25 years since Lynn Bryant was fatally stabbed while on a dog walk in the Cornish countryside. Her killer has never been found. Earlier on, Rav spoke with the officer leading that investigation. But before that, here's a reminder of the awful case, which many of you may remember from the time.
She was very popular, very friendly, very sociable. Had time for everybody. She's a real family lady. Everything was family orientated. Her children were the most important thing, and her husband. And she was really looking forward to having grandchildren. So she missed that one a lot.
Around midday on the 20th of October 1998, Lynn Bryant finished work and returned home to the quiet village of Ruan Highlands in Cornwall.
She then popped out in her car and went to a local garage. She got there around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Whilst Lynn was at Chenow's garage, a white van was seen to pull onto the forecourt, not get any petrol, and sort of pull off a short time after Lynn left the garage forecourt.
Lynn travelled the short distance home and, at around 1:30 p.m, headed out on foot.
It was Lynn's habit to take their dog, Jay, a lurcher, out for a walk. Her main one was to walk from her home address down a quiet country lane towards Ruan Highlands Chapel.
At around 1:45, a motorist spotted a woman matching Lynn's description, chatting to a man near the chapel.
He can't describe the man in any detail other than a man in his 30s, no other distinguishing features. That was probably the last time that Lynn was seen alive.
An hour later, at around 2:30 p.m, a motorist spotted something lying by a nearby field. Next to it was Lynn Bryant's dog.
What the witnesses saw when they saw Lynn's body there must have been horrific. Lynn was left lying in the gateway. What we do know is that she was stabbed several times in several locations by her attacker. She had knife wounds to her back, she had knife wounds to her neck, and she was stabbed fatally in the chest. We know that she must have fought against her attacker. She had injuries to her face. And we know that her clothing was disturbed at the time that her body was found. When you look at the evidence of the injuries and the way that Lynn's body was found, I think it is a fair conclusion that this was a sexually motivated murder.
It's not a nice thought, thinking about what she went through in her last sort of few minutes or moments of life. That's something I try not to dwell on. It was, the very beginning was almost like this is a joke, she's going to walk in through the door. You know what I mean? It just wasn't real. It was pretty horrendous.
Despite the area being intensively searched by police, neither Lynn's glasses nor the murder weapon were found.
All indications are that it was a single-edged blade around 10 to 14 centimetres, probably a penknife or a small kitchen knife.
A local farmer told detectives that an hour after Lynn Bryant was last seen, he had spotted a man walking across a field near to where her body was found.
The location is not an area that you would expect somebody to stumble upon. It's more likely that somebody had a reason to be in that location. The man in the field and the man at the chapel have never been identified.
Three weeks after Lynn Bryant's murder, police made a public appeal for help on Crimewatch.
Well, Chris Borland, this case has attracted a huge amount of publicity nationally, appalled everyone who's heard about it. Who are you appealing to tonight?
Well, Linda Bryant's killer is clearly a dangerous and violent man who has to be caught. My main appeal is to someone watching who perhaps either knows the killer or has suspicions about someone they live with or work with or live near to.
This appeal resulted in a number of viable leads, in particular regarding the white van that was spotted in the area around the time of Lynn's murder. Months into the investigation came a chilling discovery when a pair of glasses were found in an area of the crime scene that had previously been searched.
Those glasses were subsequently identified as being Lynn's glasses. How did those glasses get put back there? Were they found by somebody and returned to the scene, or were they put back there by the murderer?
Now another appeal on a crime.
A year after the murder, police made another appeal for information and, as a result, received more than 200 calls. Viewers put forward a number of names, but no one was charged. Police never gave up the hunt for Lynn Bryant's killer. In 2016, following advances in forensic technology, officers decided to re-examine clothes worn by Lynn on the day of her murder. They hoped to find her killer's DNA.
Hello, welcome to Spotlight. Tonight, a major breakthrough in a 20-year murder investigation. Detectives hunting the killer of Lynn Bryant in Cornwall have found crucial DNA.
But a match hasn't yet been found. 25 years on from her murder, Lynn Bryant's killer remains unknown.
She was such a lovely lady, and it's just not fair. I'm now older than she was when she died, and I did find that birthday quite hard. I think it made me realise just how young she was. But obviously I want somebody caught and, you know, have to pay for what they've done, but at the same time it's having to see somebody who's done that and bring it all back. It's going to be tough, but it's, I think, something the whole family need.
And I'm now with DCI James Dowler from Devon and Cornwall Police, who's leading that investigation. Firstly, James, are there any developments in this case?
Yeah, this investigation has never been closed, and in 2016 we obtained a partial DNA profile, which we believe is from the killer.
Now, the investigation has identified 3 other people that you really wish to speak to. Who are they?
Yeah, so Lynn went to the garage in Chenoweth on Ruin High Lanes, where she purchased some fuel and some groceries. While she was there, a small white dirty van was seen outside. The driver of that van was a stocky build man in his 50s with a bushy beard. When Lynn left, that van appeared to follow her.
OK, so that's the first, and then shortly after, there's someone else you'd like to identify.
That's right, yeah. Lynn went home and got her dog and took her dog for a walk. She was then seen at the crossroads near Ruin High Lanes Methodist Chapel speaking to a man. This man was described as being of thin build, 5'9", wearing a light grey top and light bottoms. And then one more after that? That's right, yeah. Lynn's body was tragically discovered at about 2:30. A farmer, shortly after that, saw a male walking away from the location where her body was discovered through a field. This man is described as being in his 30s, wearing a light-coloured top and darker-coloured bottoms.
And all these three people that you wish to identify was on the same date?
Yes, that was Tuesday, October 20th, 1998.
OK, now there was a key piece of evidence that was left at the scene as well.
That's right. So, on Lynn's body, we found vivid blue fibres. We've never been able to trace them to a specific garment, but they were commonly used around about that time in polo shirts and sweatshirts. Now, we've eliminated the fact that they've come from any of Lynn's clothing or household, and therefore we believe that they belong to the killer.
OK, so that's the fibres. Now, yes. In addition to the fibres, something else that was found at the crime scene sometime later were the glasses.
Yeah, so this was unusual in the fact that there was a really thorough police search after Lynn's body was found, and we couldn't find the tortoiseshell glasses that she wore. However, about 3 months later, on February the 2nd, 1999, these glasses reappeared at the exact spot where her body was located. We don't know how they got there or who put them there, but we need to find out why.
Yeah, and it was sometime after, as you say, the area was searched, they were then discovered. This is a close-up view of what those glasses look like, so they could be really significant to the investigation.
That's right, yeah.
James, if anyone is watching this and they're at home at the moment and they're in two minds about coming forward and giving you any information that they may be holding, what would you say to them?
Well, this is the longest and most complex investigation, unsolved murder that Devon and Cornwall have dealt with. It's never remained closed, and we're reliant on information from the public. What I would say to people that have been in two minds, perhaps have got split loyalties, is that Lynn's family deserves justice and deserve answers. It's been 25 years now. They've been mourning the loss of their mum and their grandmother. Now is the time to get in touch with us before it's too late. It was muddy at the time that Lynn was murdered, and she would have spent some time in contact with her attacker. So the attacker would have had mud and possibly her blood on him as well. If you've got any concerns around a friend, a colleague or a relative that was acting suspiciously at the time, now is the time to get in touch.
And if anyone needed any further incentive to come forward, there is a financial reward that's been put up by Crime Stoppers as well.
That's right. Crime Stoppers have offered a reward of £20,000 for information that leads to the arrest and conviction of Lynn's murderer.
Thanks, James. Now, the number to contact us, if you have any information at all, is 08000 468 9994 in our Wanted Faces gallery. Now, our next appeal takes us to Manchester, where what was supposed to be a fun girls' night out took a terrifying turn. And just to warn you, this film contains some disturbing themes.
I had been out with friends to 2 bars already that evening, and myself, my sister and one of my friends decided to stay out longer and walk down to Dive Bar as we knew it was open late. I think we got there for maybe 3 a.m. We didn't order drinks, we were just dancing. My friend went over and started talking to this group of lads. She came over to us after a while saying that they've bought us these drinks. I think they bought us a gin and tonic each. From my memory, it did taste fine. I think they also got us tequila shots. We all had one each. I didn't really talk to them much. I was just mainly dancing with my sister and my friend. We were in the bar for about an hour. Then we were all starting to feel tired, so thought, let's go. But something was weird. I don't remember the walk home, but my friend remembers what happened.
I normally see her as being able to handle her drink. She looked as if she had had more than a drink. Her sister also told me she felt like she'd been spiked. One of the guys from the bar spotted us and asked if my friend was okay. At first, I thought he was trying to help, but then continued to walk with us as I was telling him to go home. I said clearly, "We're going to bed." He kept saying, "Let's continue the party." I kept saying, "No, leave." And he said, "No, we're having a party." I said, "I'm not happy with this. I don't think he should be coming back to the flat." I recall feeling frustrated when I had repeatedly told him to leave. When we got in, my friend passed out on the sofa. He was trying to speak to her and get close to her, and she was clearly asleep. Me and my friend's sister were then trying to dance and make the best of the situation. I think he then saw this as some sort of invitation and he took his top off. That was not something we wanted. We told him to put his top on again, and he just continued to try and sit with my friend. We ended up putting her to bed in her sister's room. We shut the door and went back to the living room. My friend's sister and I started to have a conversation on how we could get him to leave. He left the room, and I thought he'd either gone to make a phone call or gone to the toilet. But after a while, it just felt like it had been too long.
The next thing I remember was this guy was sat at the end of the bed, like, staring at me. As I was so out of it, I remember sort of falling back to sleep. And when I woke up, he was sexually assaulting me. I'm pretty sure I was saying, "What are you doing? Stop." But my body just felt so weak. Then he tried to rape me. It felt as if he was trying to get on top of me. It felt as if he was trying to move my legs. I remember feeling a push and a force on me, and then I woke up a bit more and managed to push him off.
I found the guy lying next to my friend. He was trying to put his trousers up. I grabbed him immediately and was screaming at him to get out. At that point, I told him I was going to phone the police. The man just found it funny and didn't believe me. As we were arguing, we moved out of the bedroom saying, "Don't you dare go in there again." We ended up in the bathroom where he was questioning why I was angry with him. He grabbed me to kind of show his strength. He picked me up and pushed me across the room. I then slapped him and he smacked me back across the face. At this point, he started laughing. I felt so defeated. I was in tears, screaming that he must go. But he didn't leave.
I'm not joking. I'm serious. You need to go. I know exactly what you've done. You need to leave. Go! My sister was screaming at the man to get out. Leave, or he then started to be really aggressive. To get him out, we had to force him out of the apartment and unlock the door. When we finally managed to get him out, it was about 9 a.m.
Go away!
This incident has made me feel very angry. It has impacted my anxiety and depression. And it has been keeping me up at night. I've been having flashbacks. It has made me feel unsafe in my own home.
Well, earlier I spoke to DC Tisha Harriott and we started by discussing just how disturbing and predatory the behaviour was.
It was a really frightening experience for the ladies involved. They didn't invite him in, he stayed, they couldn't get him out. He was laughing at them, he shouted at them, he assaulted one of the ladies and molested the victim in the case as well. Just completely harrowing for all the ladies involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you managed to identify the suspect via the CCTV that was taken from the club. We can actually take a closer look at that now, can't we? Just talk us through what we're seeing here.
So you can see the suspect leaving Dive Bar around 4 a.m. This CCTV footage was captured from the night of the incident, the 14th of May 2022. You can see he's wearing a black cap, a puffer jacket, he's a black male, and he's between 5'6" to 5'9".
We've also got a still on the screen of the man in question there. It's not the best quality. We are going to keep that up on our website, though, for you to take a closer look at. What would you say to anybody watching this morning, or indeed, what would you say to the suspect himself?
Well, I'd say if there's anyone that knows him or thinks they know him, then please come forward and give us the information. And then also, if you're the person in the CCTV footage, again, please come forward so we can speak to you and then get the matter resolved.
Yeah, as you said, this behaviour is totally unacceptable. It's illegal. Again, for anyone that might be watching this at home and thinking, you know what, this is something that's happened to me or it's happened to a loved one that I know, what would your advice be?
I'd just say if you feel that you're in a safe space to be able to come forward and speak to us, then please do. It's, you know, if something horrible has happened to you, then the hope would be that we can stop this happening to somebody else. We don't want people out there preying on people who are vulnerable or in vulnerable situations. So yeah, if you can, please do come forward and speak to us.
Definitely, Tisha. Thank you so much. So if you do recognise this man, or if you've seen them in the northern quarter of Manchester, then please do get in touch. Our contact details are on the screen just down by the clock. We begin in Sheffield and an investigation into the murder of Italian chef Carlo Giannini in May last year.
Carlo and his family are originally from Italy. Carlo was a very lovable, friendly man. He would literally do anything for anybody.
Carlo Giannini came to Britain when he was 29 years old. For 3 years, he lived and worked in Sheffield until spending lockdown with family in Germany. In 2022, he returned to Yorkshire.
He ended up coming back after a local company headhunted him to be their pizza chef. He was really talented. He was a bit of a family man, so he still spoke to his mum quite frequently in Italy, he spoke to his family that was in Germany, so they did have quite a lot of communication with him, even though he was so far away.
On the 11th of May 2022, Carlo finished his shift at the Sheffield pizzeria, where he was now working, and was given a lift home by a colleague.
Everything was normal. He didn't voice any concerns about any worries or anything that may happen that evening.
Later on that night, Carlo was seen several times on CCTV walking towards his local park, Manor Fields Park in East Sheffield. But detectives don't know exactly where he went or who he may have met.
Carlo did live relatively close to the park, so it's not unusual for him to be walking in that area, and it's not unusual for him to be using that park. We know that he did come from the direction of his home address onto City Road and walk towards the Select Safe shop.
Shortly after 1:15 a.m, Carlo was seen on CCTV entering the park.
And that is the last official sighting that we have of Carlo.
The following morning, shortly after 5 a.m, a member of the public discovered his body.
Officers attended the scene and Carlo, unfortunately, had died of a single stab wound to the chest and was lying on one of the main pathways through Manor Fields Park.
South Yorkshire Police have painstakingly reviewed over 6,000 hours of CCTV footage, looking for clues as to who else was in the park that night.
Unfortunately, none of this CCTV gave us any evidence to take the investigation forward. Even now, over a year on, we still have had limited people come forward. We've got Carlo going into the park shortly after 1:15 in the morning, and he's found at 5 a.m. What happens between those two times is really unclear. To date, we have never identified any offenders for the offence, and we haven't recovered the murder weapon. There are a couple of people who we are yet to identify. They may hold information which is key for the investigation and finding out who did this to Carlo. So I do believe that there will be somebody in the community that does know something about what happened in the early hours of the 12th of May. If anybody does have any information, no matter how small, it might be a key part of the jigsaw that moves our investigation forwards and may lead us to identifying the offenders. Carlo's murder has really affected his family. It has been devastating time for them, and they are left wanting for answers as to what happened to Carlo and why he was killed.
Well, Carlo's family, who live in Italy, are obviously distraught and wanted to say the following about their son. Carlo was a man full of life. He loved his family, he loved life, he loved his friends. He deserves to rest in peace. And along with justice, this is the minimum we can give him after his life was taken, because no one has the right to kill. Earlier, I spoke to DCI Becky Hodgman, who is in regular contact with the Giannini family, and I started by asking her to go over the key events of what happened.
So on the 11th of May 2022, Carlo Giannini finished work at a local pizza shop. His colleague took him home during that evening and dropped him near his home address. What we know is that Carlo spent some time that evening going between his home address and a local park, which is Manor Fields Park. We have him entering the park for the last time shortly after 1:15 in the morning on the 12th of May. We don't know what happened to him within that park then, but what we do know is shortly after 5 a.m. on the 12th of May, Carlo's body was found by a member of the public, and it appears that he'd been stabbed once to the chest and he'd subsequently died as a result of that injury.
It's just really terrible, isn't it, Becky? And from what you know, there's no obvious motive for this attack, is there?
No, there isn't. Throughout our investigation, we've never identified why this took place, why Carlo lost his life, and equally we've never found out who was responsible for it.
Let's talk in a bit more detail about the park. It's a huge park. It's got multiple entrances and exits, hasn't it?
Yeah, so Manor Fields Park is a large park, as you've said. It's got over 17 entrances and exits to that park. It is in the middle of a local housing estate. So in addition to the sort of official entrances, you've also got ones that have been made through hedges and back gardens. So it is a huge park, which has made this investigation rather challenging.
Yeah, and you've been trawling through hours of CCTV, haven't you? And with that in mind, there are a number of witnesses that you're keen to speak to. We've got their pictures on the screen here. Tell us more.
Absolutely. So we've had over 6,000 hours of CCTV, which we've trawled through. Unfortunately, we haven't found the offender as a result of this. However, as you've said, there's a number of witnesses that are still outstanding.
which we would urge anybody who knows these people, or if in fact you are that person, to come forward, because you might hold a key bit of information that might take the investigation forward.
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it, Becky? And the impact on the family of Carlo has been huge, hasn't it? So anybody that's watching this morning, you would urge them to come forward, even if it's the smallest piece of information.
Absolutely. It's been totally devastating, as you can imagine, for the family. And we've not been able to provide them answers as to why this happened or who was responsible. So I do believe that there's somebody in the community that has some information that could help us progress the investigation. No matter how small that bit of information, it just might be a vital piece of the jigsaw that may give us further lines of inquiries to identify the offender.
First this morning, when two brothers walked home after visiting their mum, little did they know that a dangerous driver was about to change one of their lives forever.
In terms of what's actually happened, it is atrocious. This was a deliberate attempt to cause serious injury.
What are you playing at?
This incident is as serious as it gets.
On the 13th of June, Alan Price and his brother went to visit their mum in Runcorn.
It started off as a normal day, to be honest. I go to my mum's every day. Had some dinner. About 6 o'clock-ish, a bit later, and we decided to walk up back to my brother's. What we mainly was talking about what film we were going to watch. Yeah, it's just light-hearted chat. As we got to East Lane, there's a roundabout there. I could hear him. Thought we had enough time to cross over, but a car come flying round the corner. A blue car. It nearly hit us, both of us. I was just thinking, what an idiot. Was he drunk? I got off.
What are you playing at?
To this day, I wish I hadn't. And then it just went on from there.
I'm gonna go and sort this out. Go and talk to him.
He noticed me heading that way. I'm thinking that he thought I was coming for a confrontation with him. And then I seen him do a U-turn. I was expecting him to stop and talk to me or shout at me, but he drove onto the pavement, put his foot down. I thought, this is it, I'm going to die now. All I could feel was blood pumping down my face. My brother, he just soaked the blood all over me. He was scared. The ambulance turned up. He didn't really know what the extent of my injuries at the time, obviously. So they put my neck brace on. I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. It was the most horrible thing I'd ever had to go through.
The victim has sustained 2 breaks to his C-spine. He's suffered fractured ribs and he also had head wounds on the day. He still struggles now with what is being treated and is suspected as nerve pain, which he will probably be dealing with for the rest of his life. The CCTV in this case is horrendous. I find it quite remarkable that I've managed to speak to the victim in this case and that we're not dealing with a fatality on our roads. The victim is lucky to be alive.
Detectives are still searching for any clues as to who was driving the vehicle.
We've gone down a number of lines of inquiry and unfortunately the leads that we have all drawn a blank up to now. There are people in that footage that were there on the day that we've not managed to trace. It's a busy road. This perpetrator may have been bragging about the act that they have committed. Someone must know something about this incident. Our victim needs justice. People need to feel safe.
Well, it's affected my mental health a lot. I think about it constantly. But I also think how lucky I am, because I could have been dead. But I just want the opportunity to ask him why. Why did he try and kill me? He used his car to try and kill me. And no one should get away with that.
Absolutely shocking. I'm now with Detective Constable Ben Parkinson from Cheshire Police. So good morning, Ben. This all happened so quickly, but I have to ask, how is Alan doing now?
Yeah, first of all, good morning to you, Rob. Well, this was a quick altercation that ended in Alan being severely injured to the extent where he broke his spine in 2 places. Alan now is recovering, and he's recovering well, but as you can imagine, the long-term effects upon him and his family are very significant.
Yeah, absolutely, and it could have even been worse. So remind us when and where this took place.
Yes, we need to go back to the 13th of June this year, approximately 6:48 p.m. It happened on Hospital Way in Runcorn, Cheshire, which is adjacent to a KFC restaurant. Now, Hospital Way is the road leading to Halton General Hospital in one direction, and this area is also the main shopping precinct for Runcorn. It's known locally as the shopping city, and therefore is a traffic-dense area.
OK, now we're going to show the CCTV now, Ben. We're not going to show the impact, it's too graphic, but just talk us through what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so initially Alan and his brother had this altercation with the driver in that offending vehicle. The offending vehicle turns round at the entrance to the KFC restaurant and then purposely drives at Alan. And obviously you've stopped the images there, but that's caused him to somersault and crash into the ground, which in turn has left him sustaining that injury.
It's awful, it really is. So what do we know about the vehicle?
So the vehicle itself, what we know from speaking to Alan, is it's a Ford Fiesta, and we believe it's either a blue or purple. It can't be distinguished from the footage there. And we know that there was just a single driver. That's the only person in the vehicle at the time. Okay. Now, the vehicle also didn't have any damage at the time of before the impact, but obviously afterwards that is a significant thing to consider.
Yeah, very, very good point, that. And speaking to Alan, he got a quick glimpse at the driver of the vehicle, and as far as he's concerned, it's not someone that was known to him.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Rav. What we know about the driver is they are from a Greek/Turkish or Cypriot descent, and it was a male, it was definitely a male with dark hair, driving this blue/purple Ford Fiesta.
So how can our viewers help you today?
Yes, so your viewers can help us in a number of ways. If anyone was aware of or in the area at the time of the incident that may have dash cam footage if they were driving a vehicle, if you're on Hospital Way at the time of the incident, do you know or do you live with someone who has that type of vehicle that we've described and around this time sustained some front-end damage? Also, if you're working at a petrol station or at one at the time in a vehicle like that turned up, or again, if you're at a car garage, any vehicle with maybe a person who we've described turn up with front-end damage.
Yeah, the damage to the vehicle, as you say, could be absolutely crucial. The dash cam footage could be absolutely crucial. Or even if anyone in the community has heard anyone talking or even bragging about such an incident, that is information that you would want, isn't it? Any names that could be associated with this crime?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we could pursue all reasonable lines of inquiry if it was to come forward from this and hopefully seek some justice for Alan.
Let's hope so, Ben. Thank you for joining us today. Well, one thing's sure, this driver should certainly not be on the road driving like that. If you have any information, please do call us. All the ways you can get in touch are on your screens now, right down at the bottom by the clock.
Now, Avon and Somerset Police want to find out who was behind a sexual assault in Bristol last summer. I'm joined now by PC Andrew Murphy. Andrew, thanks so much for coming on the programme. So what can you tell us, firstly, about the incident?
Thank you, Michelle. Well, on the 14th of August 2022, at approximately 11:30 p.m, a woman was walking home from work through the centre of Bristol when she has turned into Ashley Road and has gone into one of the shops on that road. On leaving the shop, the suspect, who was walking in the opposite direction to this woman, has turned around and has begun following her. The woman has turned onto Drummond Road and the suspect has continued following her. He has then walked up to her and has reached under her clothing and touched her genitals. The woman was understandably very shocked and distressed by this and has continued trying to walk away, but the suspect has continued to follow her.
Yeah, incredibly shocking, Andrew. So what happened next?
Further down the road, the victim saw another woman who she's approached and told her what has happened, and this woman shouted at the suspect, who has then walked off. A few weeks later, the victim has been encouraged by friends to report it to the police, and she's then made that report to us.
Luckily, there was, as you say, another woman there on the night, which gave the victim the confidence to actually call out. Now, we can take a look in a bit more detail where this happened. We've got a map just to help illustrate it. Talk us through what we can see here, Andrew.
This map shows the area of central Bristol where the victim was walking. She has turned onto Ashley Road, and that's where we believe the suspect has first seen her and has begun to follow her. As she's turned onto Drummond Road, he has followed her down there, and that's where the assault has happened. They've both continued along Drummond Road, and the suspect was last seen running in the direction of the M32 towards the park by St Agnes Church.
You've also got some CCTV of the person that you're very interested in speaking to. Here it is. Talk us through this.
Yes, this footage was taken just minutes before the assault happened, and it shows the suspect walking towards the shops, and this second clip shows the suspect after he's turned around and is now following the victim.
So we've just captured a still image of the CCTV footage here. Can you just describe this man to us?
The suspect is a black male, aged between approximately 28 to 35 years of age. He is slim build, approximately 5 feet 10 inches tall, and has short black hair.
Now, as well as wanting to identify this man, you believe that there was other people around at the time that you're keen to identify as well?
Yes, interestingly, the victim mentioned that she thought there was a second man in a light blue T-shirt who was nearby when the assault happened. And we can see from this first CCTV clip that there is a man in a light blue shirt that matches that description, and the suspect turns around and appears to speak to him. So we would like to speak to that individual. He was not involved in the actual assault itself, but he certainly spoke to the suspect and may well know the suspect.
Yeah, and we also mentioned, didn't we, that the victim actually spoke to a woman after the incident who you'd be keen to identify as well?
Absolutely. This woman was a very helpful stranger who helped the victim, and we would like to reach out to her so we can speak to her in case she saw or recalls anything from that night that could help as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd urge people to come forward with any information. If you know who this person is, then please contact 08000 468 999.
First, detectives are appealing for witnesses following a series of indecent exposures in the Hampstead Heath area of London. Joining us now is DCI Paul Ridley from the Met Police. Paul, thank you for coming in. Talk us through these incidents.
Yes, good morning, Rav. Thank you for having me. So on Tuesday, the 6th of June this year in Hampstead Heath, there was a victim of an indecent exposure who came forward to us. Following that, there was 3 subsequent indecent exposures the following day, on Wednesday, the 7th of June. Unfortunately, 4 different women were targeted by this individual.
And you believe it's the same person responsible for all of these offences?
We do indeed. Based on the modus operandi and the sort of the locality and the timings, they all happen between 4:30 and 8 o'clock at night. And based on all that, we believe it's the same man responsible, yes.
Let's have a look at a map, Paul, because we can see just how close the area was where these all took place, as you say. And we can see here Hampstead Heath in London. And this is June, Paul. This is hot. This is summer. This is a very, very busy area. Lots of people around.
Yeah, like you say, it's the height of summer. There's people with families, lots of people around, tourists, dog walkers. Hampstead Heath gets visited by millions of people every year. So there were lots of people around. And as you can see, for the 3 locations there, they're all within a very specified locality.
OK, so we know that at least 4 people have been approached by this person. What has he done?
Yep, so he's approached them on 2 occasions. He's asked the women for sex and indecently touched himself on one of them as well.
OK, so clearly he needs to be found.
Absolutely.
And this has had a real impact on these victims, and we shouldn't underestimate that. No. And one of them has actually provided a statement here, which I'm going to read, and she's given us permission for that. And she says, "It has made me very cautious to approach the Heath. I am thinking whether it's safe to take my route that I've taken for months without being approached by a man who wants to have sex with me. I feel disgusted that a man can freely walk around naked." I mean, they're really powerful words, aren't they, Paul? Nobody deserves to feel like that.
No, absolutely not. These were women who were just going about their business, and to be targeted in such a way is a massive invasion of their privacy, and it's awful.
It really is. Now, one of the victims was able to capture some footage on her mobile phone, which you can see now. Talk us through this, Paul.
So she's bravely been able to capture him. You can see him lurking in the woods. Although it's not a great shot, obviously you can't see his face, what you can see is that really distinctive red and black backpack. And in addition to that, the red distinctive baseball cap as well.
As you say, yeah, very distinctive. And it may not be clear straight away, but the bottom half there, he's not actually wearing anything, is he, other than shoes?
No, that's absolutely
and that's
correct.
how he was walking around at the time. So, yeah, that's very, very good that she captured that. However, what we also have is an EFIT image from one of your victims as well.
And this is an incredibly accurate and good EFIT, which matches the description provided by all of our victims. You can see, again, the really distinctive red cap. And he is described by the victims as speaking with a European, potentially Italian accent. He's 5'8", tall, and slim build.
Have they been able to give an age for him, Paul?
They believe that he's between 25 and 35 years of age.
OK. Now, sadly, you don't think that these 4 people are likely to be the only people that may have been targeted by this man?
No, I don't believe that these are incidents in isolation. I think there's going to be other victims out there who perhaps didn't have the courage to come forward. I would really encourage them to do that we need to know if there are more victims so we can actively pursue those lines of inquiry.
And also, Paul, in your experience, sadly, this type of criminality, as serious as it already is, can escalate to even more serious types of crimes.
It certainly can, in my experience. I've seen a number of cases that have escalated further than this, so it's absolutely paramount that we identify this individual. And I say that if there are any more victims to come forward, tackling violence against women and girls is an absolute priority, not only for my force, the Met Police, but also across the country. So we need those victims to come forward, and I need to know who that man is so we can catch him.
Yeah, so who are you appealing for today?
So I'm appealing for anyone that was in Hampstead Heath at the time that may have seen the man. Obviously, look at the EFIT and just put that together with the footage. Is there anyone that perhaps you know that matches that description? And again, we've got the EFIT again there, which is really important.
Yeah. Really good image. We just need names for that. So 6th and the 7th of June this year, as you say, it's a busy time. It's the height of summer, broad daylight, lots of people around, Paul. If anyone can help, thank you for joining us. Have a good look at that EFIT if it looks familiar, or, as you've heard from Paul, if it happened to you, do get in touch. All the ways to contact us are on your screen.uk.
First, though, this morning, next week marks the 5th anniversary of the murder of 18-year-old Ethan Ned Bruce. His distraught family are still urging people to come forward.
Ethan was a fun-loving boy. He loved to read. Every week I'd have to buy 2 or 3 books because he'd get through them so quickly. He loved to play football, he loved running, he loved being outdoors. He just loved life, always smiling. Just the life and soul.
Ethan was the oldest of Sherry Ned and Jason Bruce's children.
Oh my God, I mean...
And the youngsters looked up to him.
He was like a role model to them, and he just loved them. He'd always read them bedtime stories, and every time he spoke about them, his eyes would light up. He would help with homework, tell them to be good, eat your vegetables. He was always there for them, you know.
In June 2018, Ethan celebrated his 18th birthday and was looking forward to a bright future.
He'd just started his life. He'd just found love, and he was just in the early stages of manhood.
In October 2018, Ethan was spending the weekend with his girlfriend in Greenwich. Sherry caught up with him on the phone.
This was about 4 o'clock, 4 or 5 o'clock we spoke. He said, "Mum, I'll call you back later." I didn't get the call and I just assumed that maybe he had fallen asleep or something like that. So I thought I'd catch up with him the following day, and that call never came.
Later that evening, Ethan had gone out to get some food. He was seen on CCTV in a chicken shop on Woolwich Road. Nearby, 2 vehicles, a Ford Cougar and a motorbike, were driving around the area. Police believe they were looking for someone. As Ethan left the takeaway, he was confronted by a man in a motorcycle helmet. And a fight broke out. Parked across the road, the driver of a Ford Cougar joined the brawl. Ethan managed to escape his attackers, running for his life. Both vehicles followed after him. Ethan ran towards a nearby estate, but was caught up by the 2 men on the motorbike. Police believe one of them pulled a gun and took aim. Ethan was pronounced dead at the scene.
The police came and sat me down and said, "Ethan has passed away." And that was the first time I heard. My knees buckled, I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. And then it started to become real at that point. I think he touched the lives of so many people in his short space of time. His funeral was packed. There's people standing outside of the church, and there wasn't a dry eye in the church. People spoke about him, people were bereft. And we had such a big celebration afterwards as well. We celebrated his life. I think for the first year I was in a daze. It's all been a blur. It's just been just unimaginable pain. Losing a child in such tragic circumstances, you just cannot, the words cannot describe how you feel. And I had to try and put together my life again to try and keep going for my daughter.
5 years later, Ethan's family are still struggling with unanswered questions.
The police have said they've hit a block in the road without answers from people from the community. They can't do any more. Somebody must know something. And if you can put yourself in the shoes of a mother and a family who are grieving and want to know answers, I would ask you to come forward and to give that information.
Ethan should have celebrated his 23rd birthday this year. So far, those who took his life have not faced the consequences.
Justice would mean for me to know who the perpetrators were, why it happened, and also to see them be convicted and to spend time in prison for murder. He spent 18 beautiful years, and that's what I focus on, but I do need to get answers to be able to move on. And it will never move on completely, but we have to rebuild our lives, and without those answers, it's impossible to do that.
It is just heartbreaking. I'm joined now by DI Martin Thomas, who's leading the investigation. Martin, it's really good to have you back on the programme. You've appealed with us on this case before. Have there been any updates since then?
Well, one really positive update is that the independent charity Crime Stoppers have offered a reward of up to £20,000 for any information that they receive anonymously that helps us arrest and convict the people responsible for this. So I'm hoping that reward will help encourage people to come forward with information.
Yeah, hopefully our viewers can help this morning. We just heard from Ethan's mum, Sherry, in the film there. She spoke so powerfully about her son and the impact that this has had on the whole family. 5 years on, just how are they coping?
Well, Sherry is clearly still mourning the loss of Ethan, and I think Ethan's entire family are struggling to move on from this, knowing that the people responsible are still out there. So that I'm hoping that this appeal will help us get some justice for Sherry and her family.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've been able to build up a quite a comprehensive picture of what happened that night. Just recap on the details.
So this happened on the evening of Monday, the 22nd of October 2018. We know from CCTV that Ethan was inside Mowley's chicken shop, which is on the Woolwich Road in the London Borough of Greenwich. At about 9:20 that night, Ethan left the chicken shop and was confronted by a man in a motorcycle helmet. A fight broke out and men from a car that was parked opposite the road also joined into that fight. Ethan managed to get away from these men and ran off in the direction of Armitage Road along Cornwall Place to outside Colin's house. It was at that point that we believe the people in the motorbike caught up with him and Ethan was fatally shot.
Yeah, it really is devastating, isn't it, Martin? We've got a series of clips that we can show on the programme this morning that just help to kind of break down the events of that evening. This first one, talk us through what we're seeing here.
So we've never managed to recover this vehicle. It's a silver Ford Cougar. We knew from automatic number plate readers that it came from the direction of Charlton Village before it got to where it was now. As I've said, we've never recovered that vehicle. We don't know its true identity, so any information about that vehicle would be very valuable.
Yeah, and we've got this second clip, which is of the motorbike, isn't it?
Yep, this it's a large black motorbike. We believe it's a Triumph Street Triple or a Triumph Speed Triple. We believe that the man that was on the back of that motorbike was responsible for shooting Ethan.
Now, this last bit of footage is actually of a witness that you're keen to identify.
That's right. This white man with a beard, he walked past the chicken shop just before Ethan left and was confronted by the male in the motorcycle helmet. We believe he's a really important witness in this case. We'd like him to come forward if he watches this, or anybody that knows who that man is, please come forward and let us know, and it may help us solve this case.
Just looking at that image there, it's pretty clear, isn't it? So you want people to just take some time, have a look. Indeed, if it's the witness himself that may be watching this morning, you'd urge him to come forward.
Absolutely. Any information about him would be very valuable.
Now, as we said, this is something that happened 5 years ago. Cherie, the whole family, they're still desperate for answers. For anybody that's at home listening to this and they're in two minds as to whether to come forward, even with the smallest piece of information, Martin, what would you say directly to them this morning?
Well, we know that there's people out there that know who killed Ethan Ned Bruce, and I'd urge them to come forward and provide us with information that could help us take this case forward. And if they don't want to speak to the police, they can speak to Crime Stoppers completely anonymously. And if they provide information that leads to the arrest and conviction of the people responsible, not only will they help to get justice for Ethan and his family, but they also could receive a reward of up to £20,000.
Yeah, it is a sizable reward, isn't it? Martin, thanks so much for coming. First, though, a savage assault on a night out in Bristol changed the lives of 3 men. Can you help police find those who were responsible? And just to warn you, this film does contain some violent CCTV images.
In the early hours of the 29th of October last year, 2 friends were making their way home from a night out in Bristol city centre.
2 friends have been out on a works night out. They're walking down Park Street, back down towards Broad Quay to get buses and taxis home. It can still be significantly busy at that time in the morning. It's not unusual for people to be milling about.
The friends were approached by a group of 3 men, one of whom left before things quickly turned sour.
An argument started and 2 males began to push and shove the 2 friends. That has then escalated into them being punched to the head and body. causing one of the friends to be knocked unconscious for approximately a minute.
A member of the public witnessed the attack. Horrified by what he'd seen, he decided to confront the two men who'd now been rejoined by the third.
He's walked across Broad Quay and has approached those three males. He has then been hit, causing him to be knocked unconscious and fall and hit his head on the concrete. The CCTV of the one punch is significant. That punch was thrown to cause significant injury.
With their third victim lying unconscious on the street, the attackers fled.
When someone's knocked unconscious, causing them to fall and hit their head on the concrete, resulting in multiple fractures and bleeding on the brain, there's a significant risk that they may not survive that level of assault. Staff at the hospital believed the injuries to be life-threatening.
"20 minutes later, in nearby St Nicholas Market, two men are captured on camera. Police later tracked them from the location of the assaults to this street using CCTV. Detectives believe they are the men responsible.
They're smoking, they appear to be quite jovial, and they appear to be talking about the assault. What we would love is some help from members of the public in identifying who these males are.
The men are then seen arriving at a nearby guest house before leaving Bristol the following morning. The two friends who'd been assaulted required medical treatment.
Both of them received cuts and bruises, as well as chipped teeth. They were very lucky with that level of injury, given the level of attack that they were subject to.
Meanwhile, doctors fought to save the life of the man who'd intervened.
At the beginning of the outset, we weren't convinced that he was going to survive from this assault. He received multiple fractures to his skull, bleeding on the brain, and was placed in an induced coma for 3 days, and long-lasting damage to his eyesight. He is very lucky to be alive. It's really important that we identify these males. For people to be willing to commit this level of unprovoked assault on a night out, we believe would suggest that they will have done the same thing previously. Now, that's important, not just to get justice for our two friends and our witness who were attacked, but also to prevent these three from attacking anybody else and potentially causing even more significant and serious injury to other members of the public.
And I'm with DS Paul Newell from Avon and Somerset Police. You saw from the film there. Paul, this really is a horrible assault. The huge level of violence. How are those victims doing now?
So the first two victims received sort of cuts and bruises and chipped teeth. So they've been, given the level of the assault, they've been very lucky. The final victim, who was the last one to be knocked unconscious, he was placed in an induced coma for 3 days. He suffered bleeding on the brain, fractured skull. He really was lucky to pull through. And now he's sustained life-changing injuries. In fact, we spoke to him yesterday. He's really struggled to put into words how this has made him feel. But he says he doesn't go out on nights out anymore, and he only socialises with people that he knows.
So it's clearly had a devastating impact on
absolutely.
his life. So we need to find out who's responsible. Just remind us when and where this occurred.
So this happened in the early hours of Saturday, 29th of October 2022, about 5:45 in the morning in Bristol city centre. It was at the junction of Broad Quay, Baldwin Street and Corn Street.
That's what we can just see on the map there. Now, we saw some CCTV in the film there that was taken after the attack. Just talk us through what we're seeing here.
So these two males are on St Nicholas Market shortly after the assaults. They're clearly quite relaxed and, to be honest, quite jovial, which really is particularly shocking given that they've just left two people unconscious and the level of violence that they've used.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what we do have, though, is some really clear images that can help this investigation. So just talk us through the description of who you need to trace.
Yeah. So the first male is in a blue T-shirt and blue jeans. He's of stocky build with short, dark hair. The second male is slightly shorter. He's wearing a long sleeve white top with the sleeves pushed up, black trousers, and he's got dark hair and a short beard, and they both have Irish accents.
OK, and now we're looking at the image here of the suspects at this stage who may or may not be involved. Now, this happened in Bristol, but you don't believe that these two males are local, and that could be significant.
That's correct. We believe they've got links throughout the UK.
OK, so wherever our viewers are right now, have a good look at these images because you could help. Paul, thank you. Have a good look. Do you recognise them? Were you in Bristol city centre that night? And did you witness anything? Please do get in touch. First, though, on July the 21st this year, 19-year-old Eddie King was fatally stabbed after attending a community gathering in the St Paul's area of Bristol. We're joined in a moment by DCI Mark Ormond, but first we spoke to Eddie's mum Irene and his aunt Jade about the devastating impact Eddie's death has had on them. Some viewers may find this upsetting.
He was such a happy person, so curious, so inquisitive, such a support to his friends, to his brothers. He was incredible.
The way he loved people is undescribable. I just can't describe how he loved people. I just don't feel like anyone could love the way he did.
I just really miss his hugs and the I love yous and the jokes in the morning. He was loving and kind and caring. It's difficult to put into words. Watching his brothers, like his little brother who's 9 and his big brother who's completely destroyed, you know, the plans that they had. I think this new life that we have, the best I can do for Eddie now is tend to his grave.
I feel for me it's still haven't sunk in yet. I feel like I'm in this ocean of sadness. Things are not really getting any better, they're just getting worse.
I just wish that the person that did that knew him, because I think if they knew the person that he was, they wouldn't have done this. You know, every life is a gift, but when it's your child, he was a gift to me, and somebody just took it away. And my life and our lives are changed forever. Our home, even though we didn't have everything, was a happy place, and now it's just empty.
It really is absolutely devastating. DCI Mark Ormond joins us now. Mark, thanks for coming in. What can you tell us about what happened that night?
Well, 19-year-old Eddie Knuthia, also known as Eddie King, was in the St Paul's area of Bristol on the evening of Friday the 21st of July this year. It was about 11 o'clock in the evening when he ventured by himself into Grosvenor Park. He approached two males who were on the back of a black Sur-Ron bike. They had come in from the top of the park. As Eddie approached them, the passenger on the back of the bike got off, drew a knife and stabbed Eddie 6 times. Eddie was able to run away, but collapsed a short distance away and sadly died of his injuries. Meanwhile, the two males got back on the bike and then rode off across the city.
Absolutely horrific. So what do we know about the suspects' movements that night?
So we believe that the suspects have come from the eastern side of Bristol. So they've been two upon that Sur-Ron bike. They've rode across the city. So the pink line shows how they came into Grosvenor Park and St Paul's. And then afterwards, they fled in a broadly similar direction, so crossing the M32 and back into Easton.
You've provided us with 2 clips of CCTV that we're going to see here. Talk us through what we can see.
Yep, certainly. So, so this is part of a timeline of CCTV which shows the two males wearing dark clothing riding that dark-coloured Sur bike. You might see that there's no headlamp on the bikes. This is their route into the park. We believe there may have been some light on the top of the bike on the handlebars, which may have been a mobile phone, but there was no headlamp.
OK, and we can just see there from behind, just leaving the shot there. And as you say, no visible headlight. It could be something that just jogs the memory at home of someone watching this. We can see another image here. Again, two individuals on that bike. So, do you know anything about the suspects?
So the suspects we believe to be wearing dark clothing, as you can clearly see. So black clothing, black hooded tops, joggers, footwear as well, and also wearing some facial coverings. We believe that one of the suspects to be from a black heritage background, while suspect number two we believe to be from a mixed heritage black background, so an individual with a lighter skin tone. From the CCTV, at this point, we've not been able to identify them from that, but we do think there were probably people there that night who could identify those two.
OK, another crucial lead could be the bike. What do we know about that?
Yeah, the bike is really important. So the bike involved is a Sur LBX Light B, which you can see a similar bike on the screen. It's an electric trials bike. And what we know is that bike has travelled across the city into Grosvenor Park. And as mentioned, there are no stickers or markings on that bike. The headlamp, which would normally be lit, was not, so either it's been altered or there's been some tape put over it. And really what I'm asking for, so we're yet to recover that bike, okay. So I'm trying to find out if there's anybody out there who maybe purchased this bike after the 21st of July, or they know somebody who's recently come into possession. If that is you, then I'd like them to please give us a call.
Also the weapon as well, what do we know about that?
So the weapon used was a knife. We think it had a blade, a minimum length of about 13 centimetres. Again, that's yet to be recovered and could be a very important piece of the jigsaw.
Talking about pieces of the jigsaw, if anyone's watching this right now and they think, well, I know something, I don't think it's of any use, how can they help you today?
Yeah. So what I'm really asking for is for witnesses to come forward. So that night in St Paul's, there were lots of people around. It was a community event with probably over 100 people there. We've spoken to lots of people who have come forward, but we're still trying to identify others. So if you were there in St Paul's between the hours of 10 and midnight that night, please give us a call. Equally, if you saw the bike, these bikes are very quiet on the roads, but they are very distinctive. If you saw the bike, I really want to hear from those people.
Definitely, Mark, well said. Thank you for joining us.
First this morning, who would purposefully set a house on fire with a child sleeping inside?
It's a cowardly attack. It's unprovoked and it clearly was planned and premeditated. It is unknown and unclear why these individuals have targeted this victim, and in particular a 5-year-old child.
My son Lucas and I had been in the park in the day, and we arrived home at around 7. A friend of mine came over around 8:30, and we all listened to some music. Lucas was particularly tired, so I put him to bed.
Good night. See you in the morning.
Night, Mum.
My friend popped out to the shops at around 2 a.m. I then chatted to some friends on the phone.
At approximately 2:15 a.m, 2 men were spotted on CCTV in a nearby alleyway.
I heard a loud noise downstairs, like the boiler had exploded, and ran to the top of the stairs. When I saw flames at the bottom, they were bright orange and all around the bottom of the door. I was so scared. I ran back upstairs and screamed to my friends on the phone that someone had set my house on fire. I got my son and scooped him up in my arms whilst he was still asleep. Ran through the upstairs living room, but realised the only way back out was through the front door, through the fire. My mental health has been awful since this happened. I heard a bottle fall outside the other day, and I was in bed, shaking like a leaf. I've even had nightmares of my son dying. We were extremely lucky that night. To know there were people just outside, ready to cause us so much pain, is unimaginable. I just don't know why anyone would want to do this to us, especially my 5-year-old son.
If it wasn't for the victim luckily being awake and it being a Saturday night, she would have perished, she would have died, as would have her 5-year-old child, which would have been unimaginable. This was a horrific, pre-motivated attack. This could easily have been multiple murders if it weren't for the brave actions of the mother. At this moment in time, it is unknown and unclear why these individuals have targeted this victim. The victim remains in constant fear. She's been moved away from her home, from her community. I believe that somebody does know what's happened. Really urge them to come forward. Give us enough grounds to suspect who it is so we can bring these people to justice.
I no longer have a place of my own. I'm living in fear. My son has gone backwards in school and he regularly mentions the fire, which is heartbreaking. I'm a shell of a person I once was. We live in fear, knowing that whoever has done this is still out there.
Such a scary thing to have to go through. Well, earlier I spoke to DC Aaron Stevenson, who you saw in the film there from Gwent Police, and I started by asking him how serious an incident this was.
It was a horrific incident, which ultimately has caused huge devastation to my man's son. Son in particular was only 5 years of age at the time of the incident, and this resulted in them moving away from the family home. It's been quite a horrific incident.
So what have you managed to determine about that night so far?
So the incident occurred on the 30th of April 2023 at approximately 02:15 minutes in the morning. Offenders have approached Hammond Place, which is the street behind Greenhill Place. They've then exited the vehicle and walked across a lane to the victim's home address. They can be seen on CCTV footage for a number of minutes before the incident, sort of loitering about the incident and, in my opinion, discussing what they're about to do. They then can be seen then on CCTV footage attending the victim's home address. A fire report has come back and shown that they've used an unknown accelerant to put through the letterbox. This can be seen on CCTV footage there. And shortly after that accelerant was put through, they've used an ignition to set the house alight. They've then ran back towards the way they've gone, got back into their vehicle in Hammond Place, and then headed back up the street and gone left towards Heel Edward Lewis. We believe then towards the Bargoed area, as a witness has seen a car that time of night heading towards that direction.
It's absolutely terrifying, isn't it, Aaron? And the damage to the home was extensive too. Have you been able to establish what it was that was put through the letterbox and what caused the fire?
In terms of the exact accelerant, no, due to the damage that was caused. However, we are aware that it was an accelerant, and the point of origin of the fire was at the front of that address. If the victim hadn't been up that time in the morning, which was unfortunate. I'm certain that both her and her son would have passed away, as can be seen in the CCTV footage as well. She does actually run through the fire, quite literally with a child in her arms, to escape. But it's caused extensive internal damage. The victim and the mother no longer reside at the address. And in terms of that property, it's not structurally sound anymore.
Yeah, and as you say, they're so lucky to be alive. Let's talk in a bit more detail about the suspects. We've got an image from the CCTV that we can have a look at again now. You also haven't ruled out that there's a third person involved, have you?
That is correct. The CCTV footage of the car shows a dark-coloured small vehicle, possibly a hatchback or a small saloon. So we haven't ruled out the fact that there may be a third suspect, a third driver. As can be seen in that footage, one of the suspects in particular is wearing very distinctive clothing. He has fluorescent shorts. Due to the time of night, it's quite an odd thing to be wearing that sort of clothing. So if anybody's seen anybody with those descriptions that time of night, that'd be fantastic if they can come forward. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. They left in a vehicle, as you said. Where did they travel towards? I mean, do we know any more information about the car?
In terms of the car, extensive CCTV inquiries have been conducted, but unfortunately, at this moment in time, we've only picked up the car on 2 CCTV cameras, which doesn't identify the vehicle registration number, unfortunately. We've conducted ANPR checks as well, and again, nothing has been shown. But it appears to be a small vehicle. They've exited out of Hammond Place, headed left towards Heel Edward Lewis, and an independent eyewitness has seen the vehicle heading towards the Bargoed area. So we believe potentially that is where the suspects have gone.
Aaron, what would you say to anybody who's watching you has information about what happened?
This is a very serious incident which has affected the lives of mum and son, both of them of which have attended hospital. Mum did sustain injuries. Fortunately, both of them were okay. However, this could have been significantly worse if mum hadn't been awake. The circle around the suspects is closing. People are coming forward. They are giving me names. That list at the moment is unfortunately too large to bring suspects in. In the last week or so, I've had forensics back, which has given me a mixed profile on potential suspects. In order for me to run that through the database, I need a list of names in order to do that. Otherwise, the profile is going to be too large. So if somebody can come forward with a small bit of information, be it a car, which we could link offenders to, or names, which we could link suspects to that DNA, we can potentially place the suspects at that time and place in that location, and hopefully we can move forward and bring justice for the victim and her son.
Aaron, thanks so much for joining us.